last 2 years, Europe has been faced with a migration crisis on an unprecedented scale. This mass movement of people has been documented through a media discourse.
There are 600 people around us here right now. The camp that the Hungarian government wants them in just up the road can hold 1,000. It's already got 1,300 in it. And every day across that border, thousands more are coming.
Perceptions and understanding of the individuals behind the blanket term migrant have in many ways been shaped by the images we have seen on our television screens. Through exclusive access to a news team, we will be given an insight into how these people carry out their professional roles as journalists.
If I'm honest, if I look back at the last couple of years, then this starts to seep into you a little bit because of the repeated nature of it.
By examining a first-hand experience of the displacement and social instability that migrants are facing, we can perhaps get a clearer understanding into the complexities of how society views these issues.
You saw that they were fleeing for genuine reason. For that, you have an awful lot of empathy.
It affects you deeply when you get to know people, especially and I always try and follow individual people's stories.
For broadcasters, is it possible to maintain objectivity in the telling of the situation? Furthermore, what toll does it take on them personally to be constantly in the face of such human suffering?
I was just looking at the, various sort of.
In a world where access to information is increasingly available through multiple sources, how do broadcasters choose where to place themselves?
Generally speaking, you just get a feel from reading wire copy, some releases by aid agencies, and then you just get a sense of perhaps now is the right time to go.
It was very much a case of pictures were coming in from local news agencies of bottlenecks along the migrant corridor routes, and we would deploy to those different areas to find out what was going on.
Invariably, I'll hear from Andy, and he will tell me where we're going, why we're going.
Our bags are always packed, our gear is always ready to go. It's just a matter of booking flights and getting there.
We probably aren't thinking too much about what we're actually going to go and do or what we're actually going to go and see at that moment. Primarily, our job is to get there as quickly as possible and get some live pictures up and have the correspondent in front of the camera as soon as possible.
Initially, when I first started doing the migrant crisis, I'm not sure I was necessarily ready mentally, because you don't quite know how bad it's going to be.
Some of the most striking and powerful images of the crisis were witnessed in Hungary. This was the team's first encounter with the scale of the problem.
We landed in Budapest. We got word that Kaleti station had been closed and that people were starting to amass out the front of the station.
It was extraordinary when we got there, really, in terms of the scenes. Thousands of people camped out, sleeping outside the station, families, young children. It was really quite staggering, really. It was the first time I'd seen anything like that in Europe.
The station was ring-fenced by police in sort of, if you like, riot gear. The whole of the apron out the front of the station was just covered in migrants from places like Syria, Afghanistan, who were just trying to get into the station to make their way north.
It encapsulated very well the confusion that is seen right up and down the migrant route, which was that refugees being told that if they got on the train, it would take them to Germany. We got on the train with them. It turned out it didn't take them to Germany, it stopped, and they were all taken off and taken to a camp.
My feeling when I was witnessing it, when I was filming it, was there was an awful lot of warmth, an awful lot of smiles, which was surprising considering where they, the predicament they were in. But underneath that, there was quite a bit of desperation. that they had really no idea what was going to happen and what was going to happen to them and where they were going to end up. There was mixed messages coming out in terms of where they'd be allowed to go.
They wanted us to tell their stories. They wanted us to understand that they are not. That they're people just like you and me. I could see my own son, I could see my own wife. It was just, they were just exactly the same type of people as us, just wanting to get somewhere safe.
Faced with so many in such desperate situations, how did the news crew hold to their journalistic role?
In terms of the narrative, are we being balanced? Are we telling the right story? I think that's something that we carry with us all the time in any story. I think that's just ingrained, that you've got to try and take a step and see this story for the whole story of what it is.
If anything, it enhances your knowledge and your perception of actually what is happening. So what I found a lot of the time is that it makes you much better informed and much better able to put that across, because I would return to the UK and just talking to people, let alone putting it into a TV news package, would be able to actually explain the nuances and the differences.
You do experience stuff firsthand, you do talk to people firsthand, but then you can become wrapped up in that, and you could become too wrapped up in that, and someone sitting on their sofa back in the UK might say, yeah, I feel really sorry for that refugee, but you know what, I'm struggling to feed myself because I'm on the poverty line as well, so we can't help them. And you have to keep that in mind, that things need to be seen in the round, and it's only my job to say, as I said before, to say what I'm seeing, to report what I'm seeing, and you have to be careful not to jump over that line and start giving too much opinion.
All of us are driven by the idea that we are there to give as clear and honest and unbiased portrayal of events that are happening in any given situation.
As the crisis continued, the team followed the mass movement of people. Over the months to come, they traced the journey that so many refugees continue to make across the continent.
We do see some very distressing things, but mostly it's very acute. You see this sort of thing, it's a short period, a day, a few days, a week, 2 weeks if it's a really, really big event, but then you move on. The thing about the migrant crisis is that it's been so ongoing, and as a team we've had to go back again to see the people in these desperate situations through the summer, through autumn, through winter. We went on all the walking across the land, but we've also been on some of the boat trips where people were crossing the Mediterranean and the Aegean.
We knew that we were going to something where we would hopefully see a successful rescue, but you don't expect to see what then unfolded.
Those crossings are extremely dangerous, and many people have died. And we've been unfortunate. Mark and I saw one of those crossings. Some of the rescues don't go very well, and you see people lose their lives.
We then became participants. We're supposed to be observers as journalists, but it was quite clear, we're human beings. Something happens like this, you put the camera down, you help.
That's tough. It's a kind of different level of struggle to be directly witnessing people fighting for their lives right in front of your eyes.
That was one of the hardest things I've done, mainly because usually we turn up at stories after they've happened.
It does take a toll, I think. It does. You are left with thoughts about these things, and definitely left with memories that are sometimes difficult to deal with.
It is perhaps inevitable that repeatedly witnessing these types of distressing events has had a profound effect on each of the team. However, they are convinced that what they do serves an important role in highlighting the plight of the displaced people.
The stories that we've covered, from tragedies in the Mediterranean, where you literally watch people losing their life right in front of you, through to parents walking across snow-capped fields across borders, literally hand in hand with their children who were ages of 3, 4, 5 years old, and you do naturally, as a human being, have an awful lot of empathy for those people, and you see a story that needs to be told.
Through ongoing discourse, they test their own biases.
Can we ever be purely, objective and do our own feelings come into this? I think they do, but I think that the checks and balances between myself, Mark and Andy, the three of us talking about, is this balanced? Are we being fair right across? I think between the three of us, we have that check.
Ultimately, it comes down to a simple act of documenting the lives of others.
It's a privilege to tell other people's stories, especially, it's always struck me throughout my career how willing people are in whatever situation they're in, however grim it may be. They always seem quite happy to tell you their story, and I always wonder if I was in the same position. The last thing I'd want is some TV crew coming up to them and saying, can we interview you? But amazingly, people are very willing to do that, and it's a privilege, and it's an important thing to be able to do, I think.